Colombia was one of the three countries that emerged after the dissolution of Gran Colombia in 1830. The others are Ecuador and Venezuela. A decades-long conflict between government forces, paramilitaries, and anti-government insurgent groups heavily funded by the drug trade, principally the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, escalated during the 1990s. More than 31,000 former United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, ORC, paramilitaries demobilized by the end of 2006, and the ORC as a formal organization ceased to operate. In the wake of the paramilitary demobilization, illegal armed groups arose, whose members include some former paramilitaries. After 4 years of formal peace negotiations, the Colombian government signed a final peace accord with the FARC in November 2016, which was subsequently ratified by the Colombian Congress. The accord calls for members of the FARC to demobilize, disarm, and reincorporate into society and politics. The accord also committed the Colombian government to create 3 new institutions to form a comprehensive system for truth, justice, reparation, and non-repetition, to include a Truth Commission, a special unit to coordinate the search for those who disappeared during the conflict, and a special jurisdiction for peace to administer justice for conflict-related crimes. The Colombian government has stepped up efforts to expand its presence into every one of its administrative departments. Despite decades of internal conflict and drug-related security challenges, Colombia maintains relatively strong democratic institutions characterized by peaceful, transparent elections and the protection of civil liberties.
Colombia summary.
Adobe PDF.
Geography.
Colombia.
Location: Northern South America, bordering the Caribbean Sea, between Panama and Venezuela, and bordering the North Pacific Ocean, between Ecuador and Panama.
Geographic coordinates: 400N. 7200W.
Map references: South America.
Area total:
1,138,910 square kilometers.
Land:
1,038,700 square kilometers.
Water:
100,210 square kilometers.
Note:
includes Isla de Malbelo, Roncador Cay, and Serrana Bank.
Country comparison to the world:
27.
Area comparative: slightly less than twice the size of Texas.
Area comparison map.
Area comparison map.
Land boundaries total:
6,672 kilometers.
Border countries: 5.
Brazil 1,790 kilometers, Ecuador 708 kilometers, Panama 339 kilometers, Peru 1,494 kilometers, Venezuela 2,341 kilometers.
Coastline: 3,208 kilometers. Caribbean Sea 1,760 kilometers. North Pacific Ocean 1,448 kilometers.
Maritime claims: territorial sea
12
exclusive economic zone
200
continental shelf
200 depth or to the depth of exploitation.
Climate: tropical along coast and eastern plains, cooler in highlands.
Terrain: flat coastal lowlands, central highlands, high Andes mountains, eastern lowland plains, llanos.
Elevation: mean elevation
593 m.
Lowest point:
Pacific Ocean 0 m.
Highest point:
Pico Cristobal: 5,730 m.
Natural resources: petroleum, natural gas, coal, iron ore, nickel, gold, copper, emeralds, hydropower.
Land use: agricultural land
37.5%,
arable land
1.4%, permanent crops
1.6%, /permanent pasture
34.5%,
forest
54.4%,
other
8.1%,
irrigated land 10,900 square kilometers.
Population distribution: the majority of people live in the north and west where agricultural opportunities and natural resources are found. The vast grasslands of the llanos to the south and east, which make up approximately 60% of the country, are sparsely populated.
Natural hazards: highlands subject to volcanic eruptions, occasional earthquakes, periodic droughts.
Volcanism:
Galleras 4,276 m. is one of Colombia's most active volcanoes, having erupted in 2009 and 2010 causing major evacuations. It has been deemed a decade volcano by the International Association of Volcanology and Chemistry of the Earth's interior, worthy of study due to its explosive history and close proximity to human populations. Nevado del Ruiz, 5,321 m, 129 kilometers, 80 miles, west of Bogotá, erupted in 1985 producing lahars, mudflows, that killed 23,000 people. The volcano last erupted in 1991. Additionally, after 500 years of dormancy, Nevado del Huila reawakened in 2007 and has experienced frequent eruptions since then. Other historically active volcanoes include Cumbal, Doña, Nevado del Tolima, and Porace.
Environment, current issues. Deforestation resulting from timber exploitation in the jungles of the Amazon and the region of Choco. Illicit drug crops grown by peasants in the national parks. Soil erosion, soil and water quality damage from overuse of pesticides. Air pollution, especially in Bogotá, from vehicle emissions.
Environment, international agreements. Party to
Antarctic Treaty, biodiversity, climate change, Kyoto Protocol, desertification, endangered species, hazardous wastes, marine life conservation, ozone layer protection, ship pollution, tropical timber 83, tropical timber 94, wetlands.
Signed, but not ratified.
Law of the sea.
Geography. Note, only South American country with coastlines on both the North Pacific Ocean and Caribbean Sea.
People and society.
Colombia.
Population 48,168,996.
Country comparison to the world.
30.
Nationality. Noun.
Colombians.
Adjective.
Colombian.
Ethnic groups. Mestizo and white 84.2%. Afro-Colombian. Includes mulatto, racial, and palenquero. 10.4%. Amerindian 3.4%. Romani.
Languages. Spanish. Official.
Religions. Roman Catholic 79%. Protestant 14%. Includes Pentecostal 6%, Mainline Protestant 2%, Other 6%, Other 2%, Unspecified 5%.
Demographic profile. Colombia is in the midst of a demographic transition resulting from steady declines in its fertility, mortality, and population growth rates. The birth rate has fallen from more than 6 children per woman in the 1960s to just above replacement level today as a result of increased literacy, family planning services, and urbanization. However, income inequality is among the worst in the world, and more than a third of the population lives below the poverty line.
Colombia experiences significant legal and illegal economic emigration and refugee outflows. Large-scale labor emigration dates to the 1960s. The United States and, until recently, Venezuela have been the main host countries. Emigration to Spain picked up in the 1990s because of its economic growth, but this flow has since diminished because of Spain's ailing economy and high unemployment. Colombia has been the largest source of Latin American refugees in Latin America, nearly 400,000 of whom live primarily in Venezuela and Ecuador. Venezuela's political and economic crisis since 2015, however, has created a reverse flow, consisting largely of Colombians returning home.
Forced displacement continues to be prevalent because of violence among guerrillas, paramilitary groups, and Colombian security forces. Afro-Colombian and indigenous populations are disproportionately affected. Even with the Colombian government's December 2016 peace agreement with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, the risk of displacement remains as other rebel groups fill the void left by the FARC. Between 1985 and September 2017, nearly 7.6 million persons have been internally displaced, the highest total in the world. These estimates may undercount actual numbers because many internally displaced persons are not registered. Historically, Colombia also has one of the world's highest levels of forced disappearances. About 30,000 cases have been recorded over the last 4 decades, although the number is likely to be much higher, including human rights activists, trade unionists, Afro-Colombians, indigenous people, and farmers in rural conflict zones.
Because of political violence and economic problems, Colombia received limited numbers of immigrants during the 19th and 20th centuries, mostly from the Middle East, Europe, and Japan. More recently, growth in the oil, mining, and manufacturing sectors has attracted increased labor migration. The primary source countries are Venezuela, the US, Mexico, and Argentina. Colombia has also become a transit area for illegal migrants from Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, especially Haiti and Cuba, who are en route to the US or Canada.
Age structure: 0–14 years.
23.89%. Male 5,895,637. Female 5,611,298.
15–24 years.
16.96%. Male 4,161,661. Female 4,006,875.
25–54 years.
41.98%. Male 10,043,080. Female 10,177,042.
55–64 years.
9.44%. Male 2,145,031. Female 2,404,090.
65 years and over.
7.73%. Male 1,555,848. Female 2,168,434.
Population pyramid.
Population pyramid.
Dependency ratios.
Dependency ratios are a measure of the age structure of a population. They relate the number of individuals that are likely to be economically dependent on the support of others. Dependency ratios contrast the ratio of youths, ages 0 to 14, and the elderly, ages 65 plus, to the number of those in the working age group, ages 15 to 64. Changes in the dependency ratio provide an indication of potential social support requirements resulting from changes in population age structures, as fertility leave. More dependency ratios. Field listing.
Total dependency ratio.
45.6.
Youth dependency ratio.
35.4.
Elderly dependency ratio.
10.2.
Potential support ratio.
9.8.
Median age, total.
30.4 years.
Male.
29.4 years.
Female.
31.4 years.
Country comparison to the world.
117.
Population growth rate, 0.97%.
Country comparison to the world.
112.
Birth rate, 15.8 births out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
114.
Death rate, 5.5 deaths out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
177.
Net migration rate, minus 0.6 migrant, s, out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
131.
Population distribution. The majority of people live in the north and west where agricultural opportunities and natural resources are found. The vast grasslands of the Llanos to the south and east, which make up approximately 60% of the country, are sparsely populated.
Urbanization. Urban population.
80.8% of total population.
Rate of urbanization.
1.22% annual rate of change.
Major urban areas. Population 10.574 million Bogotá, capital. 3.934 million Medellin. 2.726 million Cali. 2.218 million Barranquilla. 1.295 million Bucaramanga, 1.047 million Cartagena.
Sex ratio, at birth.
1.05 male every 1 female.
0–14 years.
1.05 male every 1 female.
15–24 years.
1.04 male every 1 female.
25–54 years.
0.98 male every 1 female.
55–64 years.
0.88 male every 1 female.
65 years and over.
0.72 male every 1 female.
Total population.
0.98 male every 1 female.
Mother's mean age at first birth. 21.7 years.
Note:
Median age at first birth among women 25-29.
maternal mortality rate 64 deaths/100,000 live births.
Country comparison to the world.
86.
Infant mortality rate, total.
13.2 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Male.
16 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Female.
10.2 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Country comparison to the world.
105.
Life expectancy at birth, total population.
76.2 years.
Male.
73 years.
Female.
79.5 years.
Country comparison to the world.
90.
Total fertility rate, 1.98 children born. Woman.
Country comparison to the world.
121.
Contraceptive prevalence rate 81%. 2015 to 16.
Health expenditures, 7.2% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
76.
Physicians density 1.82 physicians out of 1,000 population.
Hospital bed density, 1.5 beds out of 1,000 population.
Drinking water source improved.
Urban.
96.8% of population.
Rural.
73.8% of population.
Total.
91.4% of population.
Unimproved.
Urban.
3.2% of population.
Rural.
26.2% of population.
Total.
8.6% of population.
Sanitation facility access improved.
Urban.
85.2% of population.
Rural.
67.9% of population.
Total.
81.1% of population.
Unimproved.
Urban.
14.8% of population.
Rural.
32.1% of population.
Total.
18.9% of population.
HIV/AIDS adult prevalence rate 0.5%.
Country comparison to the world.
65.
HIV/AIDS. People living with HIV/AIDS, 150,000.
Country comparison to the world.
31.
HIV/AIDS deaths 4,400.
Country comparison to the world.
32.
Major infectious diseases, degree of risk.
High.
Food or waterborne diseases.
Bacterial diarrhea.
Vector-borne diseases.
Dengue fever, malaria, and yellow fever.
Note:
active local transmission of Zika virus by Aedes species mosquitoes has been identified in this country. As of August 2016, it poses an important risk, a large number of cases possible, among U.S. citizens if bitten by an infective mosquito. Other less common ways to get Zika through sex, via blood transfusion, or during pregnancy, in which the pregnant woman passes Zika virus to her fetus.
Obesity, adult prevalence rate, 22.3%.
Country comparison to the world.
78.
Children under the age of 5 years underweight, 3.4%.
Country comparison to the world.
94.
Education expenditures, 4.4% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
91.
Literacy definition.
Age 15 and over can read and write.
Total population.
94.7%.
Male.
94.4%.
Female.
94.9%.
School life expectancy. Primary to tertiary education. Total.
15 years.
Male.
14 years.
Female.
15 years.
Unemployment. Youth ages 15 to 24. Total.
17.5%.
Male.
13.7%.
Female.
22.7%.
Country comparison to the world.
75.
Government.
Colombia.
Country name. Conventional long form.
Republic of Colombia.
Conventional short form.
Colombia.
Local long form.
Republica de Colombia.
Local short form.
Colombia.
Etymology.
The country is named after explorer Christopher Columbus.
Government type. Presidential republic.
Capital. Name.
Bogota.
Geographic coordinates.
436N. 7405 W.
Time difference.
UK 5. Same time as Washington, D.C., during standard time.
Administrative divisions, 32 departments, departamentos, singular, departamento, and 1 capital district, Distrito Capital, Amazonas, Antioquia, Arauca, Atlántico, Bogotá, Bolívar, Boyacá, Caldas, Caca, Cusna, Cauca, Cesar, Choco, Córdoba, Cundinamarca, Guinea, Guaviare, La Guajira, Magdalena, Meta, Nerino, Norte de Santander, Putumayo, Quindio, Risaralda, Archipelago de San Andrés, Providencia y Santa Catalina, colloquially San Andrés y Providencia, Santander, Sucre, Tilima, Val del Cauca, Vorps, Vicarda.
Independence, the 20th of July 1810, from Spain.
National holiday, Independence Day, 20 July, 1810.
Constitution, history.
Several previous, latest promulgated the 4th of July 1991.
Amendments.
Proposed by the government, by Congress, by a constituent assembly, or by public petition. Passage requires a majority vote by Congress in each of 2 consecutive sessions. Passage of amendments to constitutional articles on citizen rights, guarantees, and duties also require approval in a referendum by over 1/2 of voters and participation of over 1/4 of citizens registered to vote. Amended many times, last in 2018.
Legal system, civil law system influenced by the Spanish and French civil codes.
International Law Organization participation, has not submitted an ICJ jurisdiction declaration, except SIC jurisdiction.
Citizenship, citizenship by birth.
No.
Citizenship by descent only.
Least one parent must be a citizen or permanent resident of Colombia.
Dual citizenship recognized.
Yes.
Residency requirement for naturalization.
5 years.
Suffrage, 18 years of age. Universal.
Executive branch, Chief of State.
President Ivan Duque Marquez, since the 7th of August 2018. Vice President Marta Lucia Ramirez Blanco, since the 7th of August 2018. The President is both Chief of State and Head of Government.
Head of Government.
President Ivan Duque Marquez, since the 7th of August 2018. Vice President Marta Lucia Ramirez Blanco, since the 7th of August 2018.
Cabinet.
Cabinet appointed by the President.
Elections. Appointments.
President directly elected by absolute majority vote in 2 rounds if needed for a single 4-year term. Election last held on the 27th of May 2018 with a runoff held on the 17th of June 2018. Next to be held in 2022. Note: political reform in 2015 eliminated presidential re-election.
Election results.
Ivan Duque Marquez elected president in 2nd round. Percent of vote. Ivan Duque Marquez, CD, 54%. Gustavo Petro, Humane Colombia, 41.8%. Other/blank/invalid 4.2%.
Legislative branch. Description.
Bicameral Congress or Congreso consists of
Senate or Senado, 108 seats, 100 members elected in a single nationwide constituency by party list proportional representation vote, 2 members elected in a special nationwide constituency for indigenous communities, 5 members of the People's Alternative Revolutionary Force, FARC, political party for the 2018 and 2022 elections only as per the 2016 peace accord, and 1 seat reserved for the runner-up presidential candidate in the recent election. All members serve 4-year terms.
Chamber of Representatives or Cámara de Representantes, 172 seats, 166 members elected in multi-seat constituencies by party list proportional representation vote. 5 members of the FARC for the 2018 and 2022 elections only as per the 2016 peace accord, and 1 seat reserved for the runner-up vice presidential candidate in the recent election. All members serve 4-year terms.
Elections. Senate, last held on the 11th of March 2018. Next to be held in March 2022.
Chamber of Representatives, last held on the 11th of March 2018. Next to be held in March 2022.
Election results. Senate, percent of vote by party, NA, seats by party, CD 19, CR 16, PC 15, PL 14, U Party 14, Green Alliance 10, PDA 5, Other 9, Composition. Men 77, women 31, percent of women 28.7%.
Chamber of Representatives, percent of vote by party, NA, seats by party, PL 35, CD 32, 30, U Party 25%, 21, Green Alliance 9, Other 13. Composition: men 147, women 25% of women 14.5%. Total Congress percent of women 20%.
Judicial branch, highest courts.
Supreme Court of Justice or Court Suprema de Justicia consists of the civil, agrarian and labor chambers, each with 7 judges, and the penal chamber with 9 judges. Constitutional Court consists of 9 magistrates. Council of State consists of 27 judges. Superior Judiciary Council consists of 13 magistrates.
Judge selection and term of office.
Supreme Court judges appointed by the Supreme Court, members from candidates submitted by the Superior Judiciary Council. Judges elected for individual 8-year terms. Constitutional Court magistrates nominated by the President, by the Supreme Court, and elected by the Senate. Judges elected for individual 8-year terms. Council of State members appointed by the State Council plenary from lists nominated by the Superior Judiciary Council.
Subordinate courts.
Superior tribunals. Appellate courts for each of the judicial districts. Regional courts. Civil municipal courts. Superior military tribunal. First instance administrative courts.
Political parties and leaders. Alternative Democratic Pole or PDA. Jorge Enrique Robledo.
Citizens option. Opción Ciudadana, or OC. Angel Alirio Moreno, formerly known as the National Integration Party or PIN.
Conservative Party or PC. Hernan Andrade.
Democratic Center Party or CD. Alvaro Uribe Vélez.
Green Alliance. Claudia Lopez Hernandez.
Humane Colombia. Gustavo Petro.
Liberal Party or PL. Cesar Gaviria.
People's Alternative Revolutionary Force or FARC. Rodrigo Londono Echeverri.
Radical Change or CR. Rodrigo Lara Aristopo.
Social National Unity Party or U-Party. Roy Barreras.
Note:
Colombia has numerous smaller political movements.
International Organization Participation, BKI, BIS, CAN, CARICOM, Observer, CD, CDB, SULUC, ITI, Candidate Country, FAO, G3, G24, G77, IADP, IAIA, IBRD, ICAO, ICC, National Committees, ICT, ICRM, IDA, IFAT, IFC, IFCS, IO, ILO, IMF, IMO, IMSO, Interpol, IOC, IAM, IPU, ISO, ITSO, ITU, ITUC, NGOs, LS, LIA, Mercosur, Associate, MEGA, NAM, OAS, OpenL, OPCW, Pacific Alliance, PCA, UN, UNIJA, UNCTAD, UNESCO, UNIDO, Union Latina, UNTO, APU, WCO, WFTU, NGOs, WHO, WIPO, WMO, WTO.
Diplomatic representation in the U.S. Chief of Mission.
Ambassador Francisco Santos Calderon, since the 17th of September 2018.
Chancery.
1724 Massachusetts Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20036.
Telephone.
12023878338.
Fax.
12022328643.
Consulate. S. General.
Atlanta, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Newark, NJ, Orlando, San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Consulate. S.
Boston, Chicago, San Francisco.
Diplomatic representation from the U.S. Chief of Mission.
Ambassador Kevin Whitaker, since the 11th of June 2014.
Embassy.
Call 24 bis number 4850, Bogota, D.C.
Mailing address.
Carrera 45 No. 24B27, Bogota, D.C.
Telephone.
57 1275200.
Fax.
57 1275460.
Flag description: 3 horizontal bands of yellow, top, double width, blue, and red. The flag retains the 3 main colors of the banner of Gran Colombia, the short-lived South American republic that broke up in 1830. Various interpretations of the colors exist and include:
yellow for the gold in Colombia's land, blue for the seas on its shores, and red for the blood spilled in attaining freedom. Alternatively, the colors have been described as representing more elemental concepts such as sovereignty and justice, yellow, loyalty and vigilance, blue, and valor and generosity, red, or simply the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity.
Note:
Similar to the flag of Ecuador, which is longer and bears the Ecuadorian coat of arms superimposed in the center.
National symbol, S. Andean condor. National colors,
Yellow, blue, red.
national anthem, name,
Himno Nacional de la República de Colombia, National Anthem of the Republic of Colombia.
lyrics/music.
Rafael Núñez, or Est Sendici.
Note:
Adopted 1920. The anthem was created from an inspirational poem written by President Rafael Núñez.
economy.
Colombia.
Economy overview. Colombia heavily depends on energy and mining exports, making it vulnerable to fluctuations in commodity prices. Colombia is Latin America's fourth largest oil producer and the world's fourth largest coal producer, third largest coffee exporter, and second largest cut flowers exporter. Colombia's economic development is hampered by inadequate infrastructure, poverty, narco-trafficking, and an uncertain security situation, in addition to dependence on primary commodities, goods that have little value added from processing or labor inputs.
Colombia's economy slowed in 2017 because of falling world market prices for oil and lower domestic oil production due to insurgent attacks on pipeline infrastructure. Although real GDP growth averaged 4.7% during the past decade, it fell to an estimated 1.8% in 2017. Declining oil prices also have contributed to reduced government revenues. In 2016, oil revenue dropped below 4% of the federal budget and likely remained below 4% in 2017. A Western credit rating agency in December 2017 downgraded Colombia's sovereign credit rating to BBB, because of weaker than expected growth and increasing external debt. Colombia has struggled to address local referendums against foreign investment, which have slowed its expansion, especially in the oil and mining sectors. Colombia's FDI declined by 3% to $10.2 billion between January and September 2017.
Colombia has signed or is negotiating free trade agreements, FTA, with more than a dozen countries. The US-Colombia FTA went into effect in May 2012. Colombia is a founding member of the Pacific Alliance, a regional trade bloc formed in 2012 by Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru to promote regional trade and economic integration. The Colombian government took steps in 2017 to address several bilateral trade irritants with the US, including those on drug scrappage, distilled spirits, pharmaceuticals, ethanol imports, and labor rights. Colombia hopes to accede to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
GDP, purchasing power parity, $711.6 billion.
$699.1 billion.
$685.6 billion.
Note:
Data are in 2017 dollars.
Country comparison to the world.
31.
GDP, official exchange rate, $314.5 billion.
GDP, real growth rate, 1.8%,
2%.
3%,
Country comparison to the world.
160.
GDP per capita, PPP, $14,400.
$14,300.
$14,200.
Note:
Data in 2017 dollars.
Country comparison to the world.
116.
Gross national saving, 18.9% of GDP.
19% of GDP.
17.4% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
104.
GDP composition by end use. Household consumption.
68.2%.
Government consumption.
14.8%.
Investment in fixed capital.
22.2%.
Investment in inventories.
0.2%.
Exports of goods and services.
14.6%.
Imports of goods and services.
Minus 19.7%.
GDP composition By sector of origin, agriculture,
7.2%.
industry,
30.8%.
services,
62.1%.
agriculture, products, coffee, cut flowers, bananas, rice, tobacco, corn, sugarcane, cocoa beans, oilseed, vegetables, shrimp, forest products,
Industries, textiles, food processing, oil, clothing and footwear, beverages, chemicals, cement, gold, coal, emeralds.
industrial production growth rate, minus 2.2%,
Country comparison to the world.
185,
Labor force, 25.76 million.
country comparison to the world,
25.
labor force by occupation, agriculture,
17%.
industry,
21%.
services,
62%.
unemployment rate, 9.3%,
9.2%.
country comparison to the world,
134.
population below poverty line, 28%,
Household income or consumption by percentage share, lowest 10%,
1.2%,
highest 10%.
39.6%,
Distribution of family income, Gini index, 51.1.
53.5,
Country comparison to the world.
12,
Budget, revenues,
83.35 billion,
expenditures,
91.73 billion,
taxes and other revenues, 26.5% of GDP.
country comparison to the world,
109.
budget surplus, plus, or deficit, minus 2.7% of GDP,
Country comparison to the world.
119,
Public debt, 49.4% of GDP.
49.8% of GDP.
Note,
Data cover general government debt, and includes debt instruments issued, or owned, by government entities other than the Treasury. The data include Treasury debt held by foreign entities. The data include debt issued by subnational entities.
country comparison to the world.
102.
Fiscal year, calendar year,
Inflation rate. Consumer prices. 4.3%.
7.5%,
Country comparison to the world.
163.
Central bank discount rate. 4.75%. The 12th of December 2017.
7.5%, the 31st of December 2016.
Country comparison to the world.
84.
Commercial bank prime lending rate. 13.69%.
14.65%,
Country comparison to the world.
52.
Stock of narrow money. $36.37 billion.
$34.01 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
57.
Stock of broad money. $36.37 billion.
$34.01 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
57.
Stock of domestic credit. $173.7 billion.
$153.1 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
47.
Market value of publicly traded shares. $85.96 billion.
$146.7 billion.
$202.7 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
43.
Current account balance, minus $10.36 billion.
Minus $12.13 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
191.
Exports, $39.48 billion.
$31.39 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
56.
Exports, partners, US 28.5%, Panama 8.6%, China 5.1%.
Exports, commodities, petroleum, coal, emeralds, coffee, nickel, cut flowers, bananas, apparel.
Imports, $44.24 billion.
$43.24 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
57.
Imports, commodities, industrial equipment, transportation equipment, consumer goods, chemicals, paper products, fuels, electricity.
Imports, partners, US 26.3%, China 19.3%, Mexico 7.5%, Brazil 5%, Germany 4.1%.
Reserves of foreign exchange and gold, $47.13 billion.
$46.18 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
42.
Debt, external, $124.6 billion.
$115 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
46.
Stock of direct foreign investment, at home, $179.6 billion.
$164.3 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
36.
Stock of direct foreign investment, abroad, $55.51 billion.
$51.82 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
42.
Exchange rates. Colombian pesos, COP, per US dollar dash.
2,957.
3,055.3.
3,055.3.
2001.
2001.1.
Energy.
Colombia.
Electricity access. Population without electricity.
1.2 million.
Electrification. Total population.
97%.
Electrification. Urban areas.
100%.
Electrification. Rural areas.
88%.
Electricity. Production. 74.92 billion kWh.
Country comparison to the world.
41.
Electricity consumption 68.25 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
40.
Electricity exports 460 million kWh.
Country comparison to the world.
69.
Electricity imports 378 million.
Country comparison to the world.
82.
Electricity installed generating capacity 16.89 million kW.
Country comparison to the world.
49.
Electricity from fossil fuels 29% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
184.
Electricity from nuclear fuels 0% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
67.
Electricity from hydroelectric plants 69% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
17.
Electricity from other renewable sources 2% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
137.
Crude oil production 853,600 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
22.
Crude oil exports 726,700 barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
18.
Crude oil imports 0 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
110.
Crude oil proved reserves 1.665 billion barrel.
Country comparison to the world.
36.
Refined petroleum products production 303,600 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
41.
Refined petroleum products consumption 333,000 barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
40.
Refined petroleum products exports 56,900 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
52.
Refined petroleum products imports 57,170 barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
74.
Natural gas production 10.02 billion qm.
Country comparison to the world.
41.
Natural gas consumption 10.08 billion cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
48.
Natural gas exports 0 qm.
Country comparison to the world.
83.
Natural gas imports 48.14 million cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
76.
Natural gas proved reserves 113.9 billion qm.
Country comparison to the world.
49.
Carbon dioxide emissions from consumption of energy 95.59 million mount.
Country comparison to the world.
45.
Communications.
Colombia.
Telephones, fixed lines, total subscriptions.
6,987,654.
Subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
15.
Country comparison to the world.
23.
Telephones, mobile cellular, total subscriptions.
62,222,011.
Subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
130.
Country comparison to the world.
25.
Telephone system, general assessment.
Modern system in many respects with a nationwide microwave radio relay system, a domestic satellite system with 41 Earth stations, and a fiber optic network linking 50 cities. The cable sector commands about half of the market by subscribers, with DSL having a declining share and with fiber-based broadband developing strongly. Competition among the MVNO, mobile virtual network operator, sector has promoted 2.9 million subscribers as of mid-2018, though most infrastructure as yet is primarily in high-density urban areas.
Domestic.
Fixed-line connections stand at about 15 per 100 persons. Mobile cellular telephone subscribership is about 130 per 100 persons. Competition among cellular service providers is resulting in falling local and international calling rates and contributing to the steep decline in the market share of fixed-line services.
International.
Country code 57. Multiple submarine cable systems provide links to the US, parts of the Caribbean, and Central and South America. Satellite Earth stations, 10, 6 Intelsat, 1 Inmarsat, 3 fully digitalized international switching centers.
Broadcast media. Combination of state-owned and privately owned broadcast media provide service. More than 500 radio stations and many national, regional, and local TV stations.
Internet country code .go.
Internet users, total.
27,452,550.
Percent of population.
58.1%.
Country comparison to the world.
28.
Broadband, fixed subscriptions, total.
6,318,936.
Subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
13.
Country comparison to the world.
24.
Transportation.
Colombia.
National Air Transport System. Number of registered air carriers.
12.
Inventory of registered aircraft operated by air carriers.
157.
Annual passenger traffic on registered air carriers.
30,742,928.
Annual freight traffic on registered air carriers.
1,317,562,271 Mount km.
Civil aircraft registration country code prefix.
Airports, 836.
Country comparison to the world.
8.
Airports, with paved runways, total.
121.
Over 3,047 m.
2.
2,438 to 3,047 m.
9.
1,524 to 2,437 m.
39.
914 to 1,523 m.
53.
Under 914 m.
18.
Airports, with unpaved runways, total.
715.
Over 3,047 m.
1.
1,524 to 2,437 m.
25.
914 to 1,523 m.
201.
Under 914 m.
488.
Heliports, 3.
Pipelines, 4,991 kilometers gas, 6,796 kilometers oil, 3,429 kilometers refined products.
Railways, total.
2,141 kilometers.
Standard gauge.
150 kilometers 1.435 meter gauge.
Narrow gauge.
1,991 kilometers 0.914 meter gauge.
Country comparison to the world.
73.
Roadways, total.
206,500 kilometers.
Country comparison to the world.
22.
Waterways, 24,725 kilometers, 18,300 kilometers navigable. The most important waterway, the River Magdalena, of which 1,488 kilometers is navigable, is dredged regularly to ensure safe passage of cargo vessels and container barges.
Country comparison to the world.
6.
Merchant marine.
Merchant marine may be defined as all ships engaged in the carriage of goods, or all commercial vessels, as opposed to all non-military ships, which excludes tugs, fishing vessels, offshore oil rigs, etc.
Total
102.
by type.
General cargo 18, oil tanker 8, other 76.
Country comparison to the world.
83.
Ports and terminals. Major seaports.
Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean, Cartagena, Santa Marta, Turbo.
Oil terminals.
Covines Offshore Terminal.
Container port. TES.
Cartagena, 2,510,093.
River ports.
Barranquilla, Rio Magdalena.
Dry bulk cargo ports.
Puerto Bolivar, coal.
Pacific Ocean. Buenaventura.
Military and security.
Colombia.
Military expenditures 3.5% of GDP.
3.1% of GDP.
3.06% of GDP.
3.12% of GDP.
3.13% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
21.
Military branches. National Army, Ejército Nacional, Republic of Colombia Navy, Armada República de Colombia, ARC, includes naval aviation, naval infantry, Infantería de Marina, IM, and Coast Guard, Colombian Air Force, Fuerzas Aéreas de Colombia, FAC.
Military service age and obligation 18 to 24 years of age for compulsory and voluntary military service. Service obligation is 18 months.
Terrorism.
Colombia.
Terrorist groups, home-based. National Liberation Army, Ejército de Liberación Nacional, ELN, aims.
Represent the rural or against the nation's wealthy and block the privatization of national resources.
Areas of operation.
The nation's largest remaining insurgent group operates mainly in the rural and mountainous areas in the northeast, especially Arauca Department, and is active in the northern and southwestern regions and along the borders with Venezuela and Ecuador.
Note.
The group has a long history of engaging in narcotics production and trafficking, extortion, and kidnappings for ransom to fund operations. April 2018.
Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, FARC, aims.
Signed a peace accord with the Colombian government in 2016 and entered the political arena in September 2017 as the People's Alternative Revolutionary Force, also known as FARC, in order to change Colombia's economic model, push an agenda focused on social justice and development of rural areas. Historically, FARC's aim has been to install a Marxist-Leninist regime in Colombia through a violent revolution.
Areas of operation. Note.
On the 30th of November 2016, the Colombian Congress approved a peace accord between the FARC and Colombian government. The government allowed FARC to form an official political party and integrate former fighters into society through measures such as funding education programs. April 2018.
Transnational issues.
Colombia.
Disputes. International. In December 2007, ICJ allocated San Andres, Providencia, and Santa Catalina Islands to Colombia under 1928 treaty but did not rule on 82 degrees W meridian as maritime boundary with Nicaragua. Managed dispute with Venezuela over maritime boundary and Venezuelan administered Los Monges Islands near the Gulf of Venezuela. Colombian organized illegal narcotics, guerrilla, and paramilitary activities penetrate all neighboring borders and have caused Colombian citizens to flee mostly into neighboring countries. Colombia, Honduras, Nicaragua, Jamaica, and the U.S. assert various claims to Buenaventura and Ciranilla Bank.
Refugees and internally displaced persons. Refugees. Country of origin.
584,369. Venezuela. Economic and political crisis. Includes Venezuelans who have claimed asylum or have received alternative legal stay. 7,816,472. Conflict between government and illegal armed groups and drug traffickers since 1985. About 300,000 new IDPs each year since 2000, 2019.
Stateless persons. 11.
Colombia, officially the Republic of Colombia, is a sovereign state largely situated in the northwest of South America. with territories in Central America. Colombia shares a border to the northwest with Panama, to the east with Venezuela and Brazil, and to the south with Ecuador and Peru. It shares its maritime limits with Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Jamaica, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. Colombia is a unitary, constitutional republic comprising 32 departments, with the capital in Bogotá. Colombia has been inhabited by various indigenous peoples since 12,000 BCE, including the Muisca, Quimbaya, and the Tairona, along with the Inca Empire that expanded to the southwest of the country. The Spanish arrived in 1499 and by the mid-16th century conquered and colonized much of the region, establishing the new Kingdom of Granada, with Santa Fe de Bogotá as its capital. Independence from Spain was achieved in 1819, but by 1830 the Gran Colombia Federation was dissolved, with what is now Colombia and Panama emerging as the Republic of New Granada. The new nation experimented with federalism as the Granadine Confederation, 1858, and then the United States of Colombia, 1863, before the Republic of Colombia was finally declared in 1886. Panama seceded in 1903, leading to Colombia's present borders. Beginning in the 1960s, the country suffered from an asymmetric low-intensity armed conflict and rampant political violence, both of which escalated in the 1990s. Since 2005, there has been significant improvement in security, stability, and rule of law. Colombia is one of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse countries in the world, with its rich cultural heritage reflecting influences by indigenous peoples, European settlement, forced African migration, immigration from Europe and the Middle East. Urban centers are mostly located in the highlands of the Andes Mountains and the Caribbean coast. Colombia is among the world's 17 megadiverse countries, and the most densely biodiverse per square kilometer. Its territory encompasses Amazon rainforest, tropical grassland and coastlines along both the Caribbean and Pacific. Colombia is a middle power and regional actor in Latin America. It is part of the CIVETS group of 6 leading emerging markets and a member of the UN, the WTO, the OAS, the Pacific Alliance, and other international organizations. Colombia's diversified economy is the 4th largest in Latin America, with macroeconomic stability and favorable long-term growth prospects. Etymology: the name Colombia is derived from the last name of Christopher Columbus, Italian, Cristoforo Colombo, Spanish, Cristobal Colon. It was conceived by the Venezuelan revolutionary Francisco de Miranda as a reference to all the New World, but especially to those portions under Spanish rule, by then from the Mississippi River to Patagonia. The name was later adopted by the Republic of Colombia of 1819, formed from the territories of the old Viceroyalty of New Granada, modern-day Colombia, Panama, Venezuela, Ecuador, and northwest Brazil. When Venezuela, Ecuador and Cundinamarca came to exist as independent states, the former department of Cundinamarca adopted the name Republic of New Granada. New Granada officially changed its name in 1858 to the Granadine Confederation. In 1863 the name was again changed, this time to United States of Colombia, before finally adopting its present name, the Republic of Colombia, in 1886. To refer to this country, the Colombian government uses the terms Colombia and República de Colombia. History: pre-Columbian era. Owing to its location, the present territory of Colombia was a corridor of early human migration from Mesoamerica and the Caribbean to the Andes and Amazon basin. The oldest archaeological finds are from the Pobanzo and El Tochumo sites in the Magdalena Valley, 100 kilometers, 62 miles, southwest of Bogotá. These sites date from the Paleo-Indian period, 18,000 to 8,000 BCE. At Puerto Hormiga and other sites, traces from the Archaic period, 8,000 to 2,000 BCE, have been found. Vestiges indicate that there was also early occupation in the regions of Elabra and Tequendama in Cundinamarca. The oldest pottery discovered in the Americas, found at San Jacinto, dates to 5000 to 4000 BCE. Indigenous people inhabited the territory that is now Colombia by 12,500 BCE. Nomadic hunter-gatherer tribes at the Elibra, Tibito and Tequendama sites near present-day Bogotá traded with one another and with other cultures from the Magdalena River Valley. Between 5000 and 1000 BCE, hunter-gatherer tribes transitioned to agrarian societies, fixed settlements were established, and pottery appeared. Beginning in the first millennium BCE, groups of Amerindians including the Muisca, Zenu, Quimbaya, and Tairona developed the political system of cacicazgos with a pyramidal structure of power headed by caciques. The Muisca inhabited mainly the area of what is now the departments of Boyacá and Cundinamarca High Plateau, Altiplano Cundiboyacense, where they formed the Muisca Confederation. They farmed maize, potato, quinoa and cotton, and traded gold, emeralds, blankets, ceramic handicrafts, cocoa and especially rock salt with neighboring nations. The Tairona inhabited northern Colombia in the isolated mountain range of Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. The Quimbaya inhabited regions of the Cauca River Valley between the western and central ranges of the Colombian Andes. Most of the Amerindians practiced agriculture and the social structure of each indigenous community was different. Some groups of indigenous people such as the Caribs lived in a state of permanent war, but others had less bellicose attitudes. The Incas expanded their empire onto the southwest part of the country. Spanish conquest. Alonso de Ojeda, who had sailed with Columbus, reached the Guajira Peninsula in 1499. Spanish explorers, led by Rodrigo de Bastidas, made the first exploration of the Caribbean coast in 1500. Christopher Columbus navigated near the Caribbean in 1502. In 1508, Vasco Núñez de Balboa accompanied an expedition to the territory through the region of Gulf of Urabá and they founded the town of Santa Maria la Antigua del Darien in 1510, the first stable settlement on the continent. Santa Marta was founded in 1525. And Cartagena in 1533. Spanish conquistador Gonzalo Jiménez de Quezada led an expedition to the interior in April 1536, and christened the districts through which he passed New Kingdom of Granada. In August 1538, he founded provisionally its capital near the Muisca Cacicazgo of Bocata, and named it Santa Fe. The name soon acquired a suffix and was called Santa Fe de Bogotá. Two other notable journeys by early conquistadors to the interior took place in the same period. Sebastián de Belalcázar, conqueror of Quito, traveled north and founded Cali, in 1536, and Popayán, in 1537. From 1536 to 1539, German conquistador Nicolaus Federmann crossed the Llanos Orientales and went over the Cordillera Oriental in a search for El Dorado, the city of gold. The legend and the gold would play a pivotal role in luring the Spanish and other Europeans to New Granada during the 16th and 17th centuries. The conquistadors made frequent alliances with the enemies of different indigenous communities. Indigenous allies were crucial to conquest, as well as to creating and maintaining empire. Indigenous peoples in New Granada experienced a decline in population due to conquest as well as Eurasian diseases, such as smallpox, to which they had no immunity. Regarding the land as deserted, the Spanish crown sold properties to all persons interested in colonized territories, creating large farms and possession of mines. In the 16th century, the nautical science in Spain reached a great development thanks to numerous scientific figures of the Cassadic and Tratacene, and nautical science was an essential pillar of the Iberian expansion. Colonial period. In 1542, the region of New Granada, along with all other Spanish possessions in South America, became part of the Viceroyalty of Peru, with its capital at Lima. In 1547, New Granada became the Captaincy General of New Granada within the Viceroyalty. In 1549, the Royal Audiencia was created by a royal decree, and New Granada was ruled by the Royal Audience of Santa Fe de Bogotá, which at the time comprised the provinces of Santa Marta, Rio de San Juan, Popayán, Guyana and Cartagena. But important decisions were taken from the colony to Spain by the Council of the Indies. In the 16th century, Europeans began to bring slaves from Africa. Spain was the only European power that could not establish factories in Africa to purchase slaves, and therefore the Spanish Empire relied on the asiento system, awarding merchants, mostly from Portugal, France, England and the Dutch Empire, the license to trade enslaved people to their overseas territories. There were people who defended the human rights and freedoms of oppressed peoples. The indigenous peoples could not be enslaved because they were legally subjects of the Spanish crown. To protect the indigenous peoples, several forms of land ownership and regulation were established: rescudos, encomiendas and haciendas. The Viceroyalty of New Granada was created in 1717, then temporarily removed, and then re-established in 1739. Its capital was Santa Fe de Bogotá. This viceroyalty included some other provinces of Northwest and South America which had previously been under the jurisdiction of the viceroyalties of New Spain or Peru and correspond mainly to today's Venezuela, Ecuador and Panama. So, Bogotá became one of the principal administrative centers of the Spanish possessions in the New World, along with Lima and Mexico City, though it remained somewhat backward compared to those two cities in several economic and logistical ways. After Great Britain declared war on Spain in 1739, Cartagena quickly became the British forces' top target, but an upset Spanish victory during the War of Jenkins' Ear, a war with Great Britain for economic control of the Caribbean, cemented Spanish dominance in the Caribbean until the 7 Years' War. The 18th century priest, botanist and mathematician José Celestino Mutis was delegated by Viceroy Antonio Caballero y Góngora to conduct an inventory of the nature of New Granada. Started in 1783. This became known as the Royal Botanical Expedition to New Granada. It classified plants and wildlife, and founded the first astronomical observatory in the city of Santa Fe de Bogotá. In July 1801 the Prussian scientist Alexander von Humboldt reached Santa Fe de Bogotá where he met with Mutis. In addition, historical figures in the process of independence in New Granada emerged from the expedition as the astronomer Francisco José de Caldas, the scientist Francisco Antonio Zia, the zoologist Jorge Tadeo Lozano and the painter Salvador Rizo. Independence. Since the beginning of the periods of conquest and colonization, there were several rebel movements against Spanish rule, but most were either crushed or remained too weak to change the overall situation. The last one that sought outright independence from Spain sprang up around 1810 and culminated in the Colombian Declaration of Independence, issued on the 20th of July 1810, the day that is now celebrated as the nation's Independence Day. This movement followed the independence of St. Domingue, present-day Haiti, in 1804, which provided some support to an eventual leader of this rebellion, Simon Bolivar. Francisco de Paula Santander also would play a decisive role. A movement was initiated by Antonio Nerino, who opposed Spanish centralism and led the opposition against the viceroyalty. Cartagena became independent in November 1811. In 1811 the United Provinces of New Granada were proclaimed, headed by Camilo Torres Tenorio. The emergence of two distinct ideological currents among the patriots, federalism and centralism, gave rise to a period of instability. Shortly after the Napoleonic Wars ended, Ferdinand VII, recently restored to the throne in Spain, unexpectedly decided to send military forces to retake most of northern South America. The viceroyalty was restored under the command of Juan Semano, whose regime punished those who participated in the patriotic movements, ignoring the political nuances of the juntas. The retribution stoked renewed rebellion, which, combined with a weakened Spain, made possible a successful rebellion led by the Venezuelan-born Simon Bolivar, who finally proclaimed independence in 1819. The pro-Spanish resistance was defeated in 1822 in the present territory of Colombia and in 1823 in Venezuela. The territory of the Viceroyalty of New Granada became the Republic of Colombia, organized as a union of the current territories of Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, Venezuela, parts of Guyana and Brazil and north of Maranon River. The Congress of Cucuta in 1821 adopted a constitution for the new republic. Simon Bolivar became the first president of Colombia, and Francisco de Paula Santander was made vice president. However, the new republic was unstable and three countries emerged from the collapse of Gran Colombia in 1830, New Granada, Ecuador and Venezuela. Colombia was the first constitutional government in South America, and the Liberal and Conservative parties, founded in 1848 and 1849 respectively, are two of the oldest surviving political parties in the Americas. Slavery was abolished in the country in 1851. Internal political and territorial divisions led to the dissolution of Gran Colombia in 1830. The so-called Department of Cundinamarca adopted the name New Granada, which it kept until 1858 when it became the Confederación Granadina, Granadine Confederation. After a two-year civil war in 1863, the United States of Colombia was created, lasting until 1886. When the country finally became known as the Republic of Colombia. Internal divisions remained between the bipartisan political forces, occasionally igniting very bloody civil wars, the most significant being the Thousand Days War, 1899 to 1902. 20th century. The United States of America's intentions to influence the area, especially the Panama Canal construction and control, led to the separation of the Department of Panama in 1903 and the establishment of it as a nation. The United States paid Colombia $25 million in 1921, 7 years after completion of the canal, for redress of President Roosevelt's role in the creation of Panama, and Colombia recognized Panama under the terms of the Thomson-Urrutia Treaty. Colombia and Peru went to war because of territory disputes far in the Amazon basin. The war ended with a peace deal brokered by the League of Nations. The League finally awarded the disputed area to Colombia in June 1934. Soon after, Colombia achieved some degree of political stability, which was interrupted by a bloody conflict that took place between the late 1940s and the early 1950s, a period known as La Violencia, the violence. Its cause was mainly mounting tensions between the two leading political parties, which subsequently ignited after the assassination of the liberal presidential candidate Jorge Eliezer Gaitan on the 9th of April 1948. The ensuing riots in Bogotá, known as El Bogotazo, spread throughout the country and claimed the lives of at least 180,000 Colombians. Colombia entered the Korean War when Laureano Gómez was elected president. It was the only Latin American country to join the war in a direct military role as an ally of the United States. Particularly important was the resistance of the Colombian troops at Old Baldy. The violence between the two political parties decreased first when Gustavo Rojas deposed the president of Colombia in a coup d'état and negotiated with the guerrillas, and then under the military junta of General Gabriel Parras. After Rojas' deposition, the Colombian Conservative Party and Colombian Liberal Party agreed to create the National Front, a coalition which would jointly govern the country. Under the deal, the presidency would alternate between conservatives and liberals every 4 years for 16 years. The two parties would have parity in all other elective offices. The National Front ended La Violencia, and National Front administrations attempted to institute far-reaching social and economic reforms in cooperation with the Alliance for Progress. Despite the progress in certain sectors, many social and political problems continued, and guerrilla groups were formally created such as the FARC, the ELN and the M19 to fight the government and political apparatus. Since the 1960s, the country has suffered from an asymmetric low-intensity armed conflict between government forces, leftist guerrilla groups and right-wing paramilitaries. The conflict escalated in the 1990s, mainly in remote rural areas. Since the beginning of the armed conflict, human rights defenders have fought for the respect for human rights, despite staggering opposition. Several guerrillas organizations decided to demobilize after peace negotiations in 1989 to 1994. The United States has been heavily involved in the conflict since its beginnings, when in the early 1960s the US government encouraged the Colombian military to attack leftist militias in rural Colombia. This was part of the US fight against communism. Mercenaries and multinational corporations such as Chiquita Brands International are some of the international actors that have contributed to the violence of the conflict. On the 4th of July 1991, a new constitution was promulgated. The changes generated by the new constitution are viewed as positive by Colombian society. 21st century. The administration of President Alvaro Uribe, 2002-10, adopted the democratic security policy which included an integrated counterterrorism and counterinsurgency campaign. The government economic plan also promoted confidence in investors. As part of a controversial peace process, the AUC, right-wing paramilitaries, as a formal organization had ceased to function. In February 2008, millions of Colombians demonstrated against FARC and other outlawed groups. After peace negotiations in Cuba, the Colombian government of President Juan Manuel Santos and guerrilla of FARC-EP announced a final agreement to end the conflict. However, a referendum to ratify the deal was unsuccessful. Afterward, the Colombian government and the FARC signed a revised peace deal in November 2016, which the Colombian Congress approved. In 2016, President Santos was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The government began a process of attention and comprehensive reparation for victims of conflict. Colombia shows modest progress in the struggle to defend human rights, as expressed by HRW. A special jurisdiction for peace has been created to investigate, clarify, prosecute and punish serious human rights violations and grave breaches of international humanitarian law which occurred during the armed conflict and to satisfy victims' right to justice. During his visit to Colombia, Pope Francis paid tribute to the victims of the conflict. Colombia's relations with Venezuela have fluctuated due to ideological differences between both governments. Colombia has offered humanitarian support with food and medicines to mitigate the shortage of supplies in Venezuela. Colombia's foreign ministry said that all efforts to resolve Venezuela's crisis should be peaceful. Colombia proposed the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals and a final document was adopted by the United Nations. Geography. The geography of Colombia is characterized by its 6 main natural regions that present their own unique characteristics, from the Andes mountain range region shared with Ecuador and Venezuela, the Pacific coastal region shared with Panama and Ecuador, the Caribbean coastal region shared with Venezuela and Panama, the Llanos, plains, shared with Venezuela, the Amazon rainforest region shared with Venezuela, Brazil, Peru and Ecuador, to the insular area, comprising islands, in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Colombia is bordered to the northwest by Panama, to the east by Venezuela and Brazil, to the south by Ecuador and Peru. It established its maritime boundaries with neighboring countries through 7 agreements on the Caribbean Sea and 3 on the Pacific Ocean. It lies between latitudes 12 degrees N and 4 degrees S, and longitudes 67 degrees and 79 degrees W. Part of the Ring of Fire, a region of the world subject to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. In the interior of Colombia, the Andes are the prevailing geographical feature. Most of Colombia's population centers are located in these interior highlands. Beyond the Colombian Massif, in the southwestern departments of Cauca and Nariño, these are divided into 3 branches known as cordilleras, mountain ranges, the Cordillera Occidental, running adjacent to the Pacific coast and including the city of Cali, the Cordillera Central, running between the Cauca and Magdalena River valleys, to the west and east respectively, and including the cities of Medellin, Manizales, Pereira and Armenia, and the Cordillera Oriental, extending northeast to the Guajira Peninsula and including Bogotá, Bucaramanga and Cúcuta. Peaks in the Cordillera Occidental exceed 4,700 meters, 15,420 feet, and in the Cordillera Central and Cordillera Oriental they reach 5,000 meters, 16,404 feet. At 2,600 meters, 8,530 feet, Bogotá is the highest city of its size in the world. East of the Andes lies the savanna of the Llanos, part of the Orinoco River basin, and, in the far southeast, the jungle of the Amazon rainforest. Together these lowlands comprise over half Colombia's territory, but they contain less than 6% of the population. To the north the Caribbean coast, home to 21.9% of the population and the location of the major port cities of Barranquilla and Cartagena, generally consists of low-lying plains, but it also contains the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta mountain range, which includes the country's tallest peaks, Pico Cristobal Colon and Pico Simon Bolivar, and the La Guajira Desert. By contrast, the narrow and discontinuous Pacific coastal lowlands, backed by the Serranía de Bordo Mountains, are sparsely populated and covered in dense vegetation. The principal Pacific port is Buenaventura. The main rivers of Colombia are Magdalena, Cauca, Guavia, Atrato, Meta, Putumayo and Caca. Colombia has four main drainage systems: the Pacific Drain, the Caribbean Drain, the Orinoco Basin and the Amazon Basin. The Orinoco and Amazon rivers mark limits with Colombia to Venezuela and Peru respectively. Protected areas and the national park system cover an area of about 14,268,224 hectares, 142,682.24 square kilometers, and account for 12.77% of the Colombian territory. Compared to neighboring countries, rates of deforestation in Colombia are still relatively low. Colombia is the sixth country in the world by magnitude of total renewable freshwater supply, and still has large reserves of freshwater. Climate. The climate of Colombia is characterized for being tropical, presenting variations within 6 natural regions and depending on the altitude, temperature, humidity, winds and rainfall. The diversity of climate zones in Colombia is characterized for having tropical rainforests, savannas, steppes, deserts and mountain climate. Mountain climate is one of the unique features of the Andes and other high-altitude reliefs where climate is determined by elevation. Below 1,000 meters, 3,281 feet, in elevation is the warm altitudinal zone, where temperatures are above 24 degrees Celsius, 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit. About 82.5% of the country's total area lies in the warm altitudinal zone. The temperate climate altitudinal zone located between 1,001 and 2,000 meters, 3,284 and 6,562 feet, is characterized for presenting an average temperature ranging between 17 and 24 degrees Celsius, 62.6 and 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit. The cold climate is present between 2001 and 3000 meters, 6565 and 9843 feet, and the temperatures vary between 12 and 17 degrees Celsius, 53.6 and 62.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Beyond lies the alpine conditions of the forested zone and then the treeless grasslands of the Paramos. Above 4,000 meters, 13,123 feet, where temperatures are below freezing, the climate is glacial, a zone of permanent snow and ice. Biodiversity. Colombia is one of the mega-diverse countries in biodiversity, ranking first in bird species. As for plants, the country has between 40,000 and 45,000 plant species, equivalent to 10 or 20% of total global species, which is even more remarkable given that Colombia is considered a country of intermediate size. Colombia is the second most biodiverse country in the world, lagging only after Brazil, which is approximately 7 times bigger. Colombia is the country in the planet more characterized by a high biodiversity, with the highest rate of species by area unit worldwide, and it has the largest number of endemisms, species that are not found naturally anywhere else, of any country. About 10% of the species of the Earth live in Colombia, including over 1,900 species of bird, more than in Europe and North America combined. Colombia has 10% of the world's mammals species, 14% of the amphibian species and 18% of the bird species of the world. Colombia has about 2,000 species of marine fish and is the second most diverse country in freshwater fish. Colombia is the country with more endemic species of butterflies, number 1 in terms of orchid species, and approximately 7,000 species of beetles. Colombia is second in the number of amphibian species and is the third most diverse country in reptiles and palms. There are about 1,900 species of mollusks, and according to estimates there are about 300,000 species of invertebrates in the country. In Colombia there are 32 terrestrial biomes and 314 types of ecosystems. Government and politics. The government of Colombia takes place within the framework of a presidential participatory democratic republic as established in the Constitution of 1991. In accordance with the principle of separation of powers, government is divided into 3 branches: the executive branch, the legislative branch and the judicial branch. As the head of the executive branch, the President of Colombia serves as both head of state and head of government, followed by the Vice President and the Council of Ministers. The President is elected by popular vote to serve 4-year term. In 2015, Colombia's Congress approved the repeal of a 2004 constitutional amendment that eliminated the one-term limit for presidents. At the provincial level, executive power is vested in department governors, municipal mayors and local administrators for smaller administrative subdivisions, such as corregimientos or comunas. All regional elections are held 1 year and 5 months after the presidential election. The legislative branch of government is represented nationally by the Congress, a bicameral institution comprising a 166-seat Chamber of Representatives and a 102-seat Senate. The Senate is elected nationally and the Chamber of Representatives is elected in electoral districts. Members of both houses are elected to serve 4-year terms 2 months before the president, also by popular vote. The judicial branch is headed by 4 high courts, consisting of the Supreme Court, which deals with penal and civil matters, the Council of State, which has special responsibility for administrative law and also provides legal advice to the executive, the Constitutional Court, responsible for assuring the integrity of the Colombian Constitution, and the Superior Council of Judicature, responsible for auditing the judicial branch. Colombia operates a system of civil law, which since 2005 has been applied through an adversarial system. Despite a number of controversies, the democratic security policy has ensured that former President Uribe remained popular among Colombian people, with his approval rating peaking at 76%, according to a poll in 2009. However, having served 2 terms, he was constitutionally barred from seeking re-election in 2010. In the runoff elections on the 20th of June 2010, the former Minister of Defense Juan Manuel Santos won with 69% of the vote against the second most popular candidate, Antanas Mocas. A second round was required since no candidate received over the 50% winning threshold of votes. Santos won nearly 51% of the vote in second-round elections on the 15th of June 2014, beating right-wing rival Oscar Ivan Zuluaga, who won 45%. Ivan Duque won in the second round with 54% of the vote, against 42% for his left-wing rival, Gustavo Petro. His term as Colombia's president runs for 4 years beginning the 7th of August 2018. Foreign Affairs. The foreign affairs of Colombia are headed by the president, as head of state, and managed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Colombia has diplomatic missions in all continents. Colombia was one of the 4 founding members of the Pacific Alliance, which is a political, economic and cooperative integration mechanism that promotes the free circulation of goods, services, capital and persons between the members, as well as a common stock exchange and joint embassies in several countries. Colombia is also a member of the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the Organization of American States, the Organization of Ibero-American States, the Union of South American Nations and the Andean Community of Nations. Colombia is a global partner of NATO military. The executive branch of government is responsible for managing the defense of Colombia, with the President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The Ministry of Defense exercises day-to-day control of the military and the Colombian National Police. Colombia has 455,461 active military personnel, and in 2016 3.4% of the country's GDP went towards military expenditure, placing it 24th in the world. Colombia's armed forces are the largest in Latin America, and it is the second largest spender on its military after Brazil. The Colombian military is divided into three branches: the National Army of Colombia, the Colombian Air Force, and the Colombian Navy. The National Police functions as a gendarmerie, operating independently from the military as the law enforcement agency for the entire country. Each of these operates with their own intelligence apparatus separate from the National Intelligence Directorate, DNI. In Spanish, the National Army is formed by divisions, brigades, special brigades and special units. The Colombian Navy by the Naval Infantry, the Naval Force of the Caribbean, the Naval Force of the Pacific, the Naval Force of the South, the Naval Force of the East, Colombia Coast Guards, Naval Aviation and the Specific Command of San Andrés y Providencia, and the Air Force by 15 air units. The National Police has a presence in all municipalities. Administrative divisions. Colombia is divided into 32 departments and one capital district, which is treated as a department. Bogota also serves as the capital of the department of Cundinamarca. Departments are subdivided into municipalities, each of which is assigned a municipal seat, and municipalities are in turn subdivided into corregimientos in rural areas and into comunas in urban areas. Each department has a local government with a governor and assembly directly elected to 4-year terms, and each municipality is headed by a mayor and council. There is a popularly elected local administrative board in each of the corregimientos or comunas. In addition to the capital, 4 other cities have been designated districts, in effect special municipalities, on the basis of special distinguishing features. These are Barranquilla, Cartagena, Santa Marta and Buenaventura. Some departments have local administrative subdivisions, where towns have a large concentration of population and municipalities are near each other, for example in Antioquia and Cundinamarca. Where departments have a low population, for example Amazonas, Vorps and Vicada, special administrative divisions are employed, such as department corregimientos, which are a hybrid of a municipality and a corregimiento. Historically an agrarian economy, Colombia urbanized rapidly in the 20th century, by the end of which just 15.8% of the workforce were employed in agriculture, generating just 6.6% of GDP. 19.6% of the workforce were employed in industry and 64.6% in services, responsible for 33.4% and 59.9% of GDP respectively. The country's economic production is dominated by its strong domestic demand. Consumption expenditure by households is the largest component of GDP. Colombia's market economy grew steadily in the latter part of the 20th century, with gross domestic product, GDP, increasing at an average rate of over 4% per year between 1970 and 1998. The country suffered a recession in 1999, the first full year of negative growth since the Great Depression, and the recovery from that recession was long and painful. However, in recent years growth has been impressive, reaching 6.9% in 2007, one of the highest rates of growth in Latin America. According to International Monetary Fund estimates, in 2012 Colombia's GDP, PPP, was $500 billion, 28th in the world and 3rd in South America. Total government expenditures account for 27.9% of the domestic economy. External debt equals 39.9% of gross domestic product. A strong fiscal climate was reaffirmed by a boost in bond ratings. Annual inflation closed 2017 at 4.09%. versus 5.75% in 2016. The average national unemployment rate in 2017 was 9.4%, although the informality is the biggest problem facing the labor market. The income of formal workers climbed 24.8% in 5 years while labor incomes of informal workers rose only 9%. Colombia has free trade zone, FTZ, such as Zona Franca del Pacifico, located in the Val del Cauca, one of the most striking areas for foreign investment. The financial sector has grown favorably due to good liquidity in the economy, the growth of credit and the positive performance of the Colombian economy. The Colombian Stock Exchange through the Latin American Integrated Market, MILA, offers a regional market to trade equities. Colombia is now one of only 3 economies with a perfect score on the Strength of Legal Rights Index, according to the World Bank. The electricity production in Colombia comes mainly from renewable energy sources. 69.93% is obtained from the hydroelectric generation. Colombia's commitment to renewable energy was recognized in the 2014 Global Green Economy Index, GEI, ranking among the top 10 nations in the world in terms of greening efficiency sectors. Colombia is rich in natural resources, and its main exports include mineral fuels, oils, distillation products, fruit and other agricultural products, sugars and sugar confectionery, food products, plastics, precious stones, metals, forest products, chemical goods, pharmaceuticals, vehicles, electronic products, electrical equipments, perfumery and cosmetics, machinery, manufactured articles, textile and fabrics, clothing and footwear, glass and glassware, furniture, prefabricated buildings, military products, home and office material, construction equipment, software, among others. Principal trading partners are the United States, China, the European Union and some Latin American countries. Non-traditional exports have boosted the growth of Colombian foreign sales as well as the diversification of destinations of export thanks to new free trade agreements. In 2017, the National Administrative Department of Statistics, DANE, reported that 26.9% of the population were living below the poverty line, of which 7.4% in extreme poverty. The multidimensional poverty rate stands at 17.0% of the population. The government has also been developing a process of financial inclusion within the country's most vulnerable population. Recent economic growth has led to a considerable increase of new millionaires, including the new entrepreneurs, Colombians with a net worth exceeding $1 billion. The contribution of travel and tourism to GDP was $5,880.3 billion, 2.0% of total GDP. In 2016, tourism generated 556,135 jobs, 2.5% of total employment. In 2016, foreign tourist visits were predicted to have risen from 0.6 million in 2007 to 4 million in 2017. Science and technology. Colombia has more than 3,950 research groups in science and technology. Impulsor, a government body that promotes entrepreneurship and innovation in the country, provides grants to startups, in addition to other services it and institutions like apps.co provide. Co-working spaces have arisen to serve as communities for startups large and small. Organizations such as the Corporation for Biological Research, CIB, for the support of young people interested in scientific work has been successfully developed in Colombia. The International Center for Tropical Agriculture based in Colombia investigates the increasing challenge of global warming and food security. Important inventions related to the medicine have been made in Colombia, such as the first external artificial pacemaker with internal electrodes, invented by the electronics engineer Jorge Reynolds Pombo. Invention of great importance for those who suffer from heart failure. Also invented in Colombia were the microkeratome and keratomeleusis technique, which form the fundamental basis of what now is known as LASIK, one of the most important techniques for the correction of refractive errors of vision. and the Hakim valve for the treatment of hydrocephalus, among others. Colombia has begun to innovate in military technology for its army and other armies of the world, especially in the design and creation of personal ballistic protection products, military hardware, military robots, bombs, simulators and radar. Some leading Colombian scientists are Joseph M. Toch, researcher recognized for his work on the genetic diversity of food, Manuel Elkin Patarroyo, who is known for his groundbreaking work on synthetic vaccines for malaria, Francisco Lopera, who discovered the PASA mutation or a type of early-onset Alzheimer's, Rodolfo Linares, known for his study of the intrinsic neurons' properties and the theory of a syndrome that had changed the way of understanding the functioning of the brain, Jairo Quiroga Puello, recognized for his studies on the characterization of synthetic substances which can be used to fight fungus, tumors, tuberculosis and even some viruses, and Angela Ristapur, who established accurate diagnoses and treatments to combat the effects of a disease caused by the Paracoccidioides brasiliensis, among other scientists. Infrastructure. Transportation in Colombia is regulated within the functions of the Ministry of Transport and entities such as the National Roads Institute, INVIAS, responsible for the highways in Colombia, the Aerocivil, responsible for civil aviation and airports, the National Infrastructure Agency, in charge of concessions through public-private partnerships, for the design, construction, maintenance, operation, and administration of the transport infrastructure. The General Maritime Directorate, DIMAR, has the responsibility of coordinating maritime traffic control along with the Colombian Navy, among others, and under the supervision of the Superintendency of Ports and Transport. The road network in Colombia has a length of about 215,000 kilometers, of which 23,000 are paved. Rail transportation in Colombia is dedicated almost entirely to freight shipments, and the railway network has a length of 1,700 kilometers of potentially active rails. Colombia has 3,960 kilometers of gas pipelines, 4,900 kilometers of oil pipelines, and 2,990 kilometers of refined products pipelines. The target of Colombia's government is to build 7,000 kilometers of roads for the 2016 to 2020 period and reduce travel times by 30% and transport costs by 20%. A toll road concession program will comprise 40 projects, and is part of a larger strategic goal to invest nearly $50 billion in transport infrastructure, including railway systems, making the Magdalena River navigable again, improving port facilities, as well as an expansion of Bogotá's airport. Demographics. Population. Year million, 1950 12.3, 2000 40.4, 2016 48.7. With an estimated 49 million people in 2017, Colombia is the third most populous country in Latin America, after Brazil and Mexico. At the beginning of the 20th century, Colombia's population was approximately 4 million. Since the early 1970s, Colombia has experienced steady declines in its fertility, mortality, and population growth rates. The population growth rate for 2016 is estimated to be 0.9%. The total fertility rate was 1.9 births per woman in 2015. About 26.8% of the population were 15 years old or younger. 65.7% were between 15 and 64 years old, and 7.4% were over 65 years old. The proportion of older persons in the total population has begun to increase substantially. Colombia is projected to have a population of 50.2 million by 2020 and 55.3 million by 2050. The population is concentrated in the Andean highlands and along the Caribbean coast. Also, the population densities are generally higher in the Andean region. The 9 eastern lowland departments, comprising about 54% of Colombia's area, have less than 6% of the population. Traditionally a rural society, movement to urban areas was very heavy in the mid-20th century, and Colombia is now one of the most urbanized countries in Latin America. The urban population increased from 31% of the total in 1938 to nearly 60% in 1973. And by 2014 the figure stood at 76%. The population of Bogotá alone has increased from just over 300,000 in 1938 to approximately 8 million today. In total 72 cities now have populations of 100,000 or more. 2015. As of 2012, Colombia has the world's largest populations of internally displaced persons, IDPs, estimated to be up to 4.9 million people. The life expectancy is 74.8 years in 2015 and infant mortality is 13.1 per thousand in 2016. In 2015, 94.58% of adults and 98.66% of youth are literate, and the government spends about 4.49% of its GDP in education. Colombia is ranked third in the world in the Happy Planet Index. Languages. More than 99.2% of Colombians speak Spanish, also called Castilian, 65 Amerindian languages, 2 Creole languages. The Romani language and Colombian Sign Language are also spoken in the country. English has official status in the archipelago of San Andrés, Providencia and Santa Catalina, including Spanish. A total of 101 languages are listed for Colombia in the Ethnologue database. The specific number of spoken languages varies slightly, since some authors consider as different languages what others consider to be varieties or dialects of the same language. Best estimates recorded 71 languages that are spoken in country today, most of which belong to the Chibchan, Tucanan, Bora-Watoto, Guajiboan, Arawakan, Cariban, Barbacoan, and Salaban language families. There are currently about 850,000 speakers of native languages. Ethnic groups. Human biological diversity and ethnicity. Percentage. Mestizo and white. 86%. Black. Includes mulatto, 10.6%, Amerindian, 3.4%, Roma, 0.01%. Colombia is ethnically diverse, its people descending from the original native inhabitants, Spanish colonists, Africans originally brought to the country as slaves, and 20th century immigrants from Europe and the Middle East, all contributing to a diverse cultural heritage. The demographic distribution reflects a pattern that is influenced by colonial history. Whites tend to live mainly in urban centers, like Bogotá, Medellín or Cali, and the burgeoning highland cities. The populations of the major cities also include mestizos. Mestizo campesinos, people living in rural areas, also live in the Andean highlands, where some Spanish conquerors mixed with the women of Amerindian chiefdoms. Mestizos include artisans and small tradesmen that have played a major part in the urban expansion of recent decades. The 2005 census reported that the non-ethnic population, consisting of whites and mestizos, those of mixed white European and Amerindian ancestry, constituted 86% of the national population. 10.6% is of African ancestry. Indigenous Amerindians comprise 3.4% of the population. 0.01% of the population are Roma. An extraofficial estimate considers that the 49% of the Colombian population is mestizo or of mixed European and Amerindian ancestry, and that approximately 37% is white, mainly of Spanish lineage. But there is also a large population of Middle East descent. In some sectors of society there is a considerable input of Italian and German ancestry. Many of the indigenous peoples experienced a reduction in population during the Spanish rule, and many others were absorbed into the mestizo population, but the remainder currently represents over 80 distinct cultures. Reserves, rescudos, established for indigenous peoples occupy 30,571,640 hectares, 305,716.4 square